Hi there. This time I'd like to talk a little bit about the human rights of Americans. Now, I'm sure you've all heard of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Well, I'm here to tell you that is not and was never intended to be a complete list. Now, that phrase, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that comes from the Declaration of Independence. That declaration made quite a number of statements which were pretty radical in their time. As a matter of fact, they could be perceived as pretty radical today. Well, that's who we are. This is a pretty radical country. Now, the most well-known part of the Declaration of Independence is from the preamble, and it says that all men are created equal and that they are endowed by whatever created them with certain unalienable rights. It also says that the main job of government is to secure those rights. Now, what I'm talking about today are those unalienable rights. Thomas Jefferson, the main author of the Declaration, mentions those three: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But before enumerating the rights, he says, among these. Among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So he's saying there's more. And I think if you press Mr. Jefferson and his two colleagues in authoring the Declaration, Mr. Adams and Dr. Franklin, they would all agree that among these could be the right to own property, the right to practice one's religion and have one's own beliefs, the right to travel and live wherever one pleases, also the right to establish a business, or to choose one's own employer, the right to choose one's wife. Now, you notice I said wife, not spouse. These rights were for men, but not necessarily for women. I'll be talking about that in a minute or two. But getting back to these unenumerated but still unalienable rights, the ones I just mentioned would, I think, be agreed upon by all three authors, but Mr. Adams and Dr. Franklin might also have added the right not to be owned, the right not to be the property of another man. Mr. Jefferson might not agree with that one. Actually, we, as you know, ended up fighting a war over that in the 1860s, but I think today we all agree that it is among the unalienable rights that you cannot be owned by another person. So, that right was not universally accepted before, but it is now. So, the rights expand over time. As the nation has developed, the number of unalienable rights that we recognize as being among these has grown. Also, the group of humans who possess these unalienable rights has expanded over time. Good example, African Americans were no longer considered property after the 1860s, and they acquired many of these rights, though not all. Actually lost some over time, only to have them restored to some degree during the 1960s. Women, as I mentioned before, did not possess, according to the government, inalienable rights in 1776. Abigail Adams, who, through her husband, did contribute considerably to the writing of the Declaration, was not a man, and so her rights, such as they were not considered unalienable. Women received some unalienable rights in the 1920s and more in the 1960s. So, African Americans and women are among the more obvious groups who have obtained new rights over time, but there are others. So, over time, there's an expansion of the number of rights, and there's an expansion of the groups of humans who, according to the government, possess these rights. You could say this whole process started in the year 1215, when the King of England granted some limited rights to a limited group of noblemen in a document called Magna Carta. Before 1215, the humans who were considered to have unalienable rights were pretty much limited to the rulers. The Magna Carta established some rights for the nobility. The English barons and later on white male landowners had some unalienable rights, and those were ultimately extended to all white men and then all male citizens, and then they included females, and well, later some of the rights were actually granted to immigrants. As I mentioned, the rights of African Americans were granted in the 1860s, taken away, and reestablished in the 1960s. Now, I would maintain that the unalienable rights bestowed by the Creator of all human beings have always applied to all of these individuals, but the United States government and our collective social understanding has taken some time before acknowledging all these individuals possessing unalienable rights. As a matter of fact, in recent years, the government has withdrawn some of the rights of humans. Now, they're not allowed to do that. Those rights are unalienable. The government also has had the audacity to declare that human rights belong to corporations and other non-human entities. And that's downright ridiculous. This has got to stop. The United States of America was established on a declaration of unalienable human rights, and the American dream is based on the expansion of those rights. And I actually talk a little bit more about the mechanism of the American dream in some of my other videos. Any government which does not secure those rights is not doing its job, and a government like this one, which is trying to take away those rights, needs to be replaced. If I haven't convinced you by now that it's time for a revolution, I hope you will play some of my other videos, especially the sequel to this one, which I talk about Ronnie Rodeo and the withdrawal of human rights in a little more detail. Thank you all for your attention. I hope this has been helpful. Hope you have enjoyed it. And I hope you will join me again sometime.